Hey there, True Crime family. Welcome back to True Crime from my couch. I'm your host, Allie, and today we're diving into a case that has absolutely consumed me for months. I've spent so much time researching this case, and I have to tell you, the more I learn, the more questions I have. Before we begin, I want you to picture something. Imagine a cold Vermont night in March 2004. An abandoned farmhouse stands dark against the sky, and there, backed right into the building's weathered walls, sits a black Oldsmobile. 2 uncashed paychecks rest in the front seat. But the 17-year-old girl who should be driving it, she's gone, vanished into thin air. This is the story of Brianna Maitland's disappearance. And let me tell you, this case has layers upon layers of mystery that we're going to unravel together. But before we go any further, I need to say something important. This isn't just another true crime story for us to analyze. Brianna was a real person, a daughter, a friend, a teenager with her whole life ahead of her. She has parents who have been searching for answers for almost 2 decades. If anyone listening knows anything about what happened to Brianna, even the smallest detail, please contact the Vermont State Police. Sometimes the tiniest piece of information can be the key that unlocks an entire case. Let me tell you about Brianna Maitland, because this wasn't your typical small-town teenager. Born on October 8, 1986, in Burlington, Vermont, Brianna Alexandra Maitland grew up on a farm in East Franklin, literally 5 miles from the Canadian border. And that detail about the border, keep that in mind, because it becomes incredibly important later in our story. When I started researching Brianna's life, one thing became clear immediately. This young woman had an incredible sense of independence. By 17, she had already moved out of her family home. Now, this wasn't because of family drama or problems at home. By all accounts, she had a good relationship with her parents, Bruce and Kelly Maitland, and her older brother. No, Brianna moved out simply because she wanted to start building her own life. She moved in with a friend named Jillian in Sheldon, Vermont, about 15 miles from her family's farm. And here's what amazes me about Brianna. She wasn't just striking out on her own. She was working 2 jobs while still attending high school. 2 jobs at 17. She worked as a dishwasher at the Black Lantern Inn in Montgomery and also had a position at KJ's Diner. She was paying her own bills, making her own way in the world, all while trying to graduate high school. Her mother, Kelly, told investigators something fascinating about Brianna's personality. Even as a little kid, she had this intense sense of justice. If something wasn't fair, she wouldn't just let it slide. She would speak up about it. And that trait, that determined sense of right and wrong, it might have played a role in what eventually happened to her. Now, I want to tell you about something significant that happened just weeks before Brianna disappeared, because this event, it changes everything about how we look at this case. On February 24th, 2004, just 23 days before she vanished, Brianna was involved in a violent altercation at a party in Berkshire. This wasn't just some teenage disagreement or a shoving match. This was serious. Brianna got into a physical fight with a former friend named Keely Lacrosse. The fight left Brianna with a broken nose, a concussion, and injuries serious enough to need medical attention. What Brianna did next shows us exactly who she was as a person. Instead of letting it go, which, let's be honest, would have been the easier choice in a small town where everybody knows everyone, she went to the police and pressed charges. The case was still pending when she disappeared. And after she filed those charges, several witnesses later told investigators that Brianna received threats. There was serious tension between her and certain social groups. Some people weren't happy she'd gone to the police. Now, let me take you through March 19th, 2004, the last day anyone saw Brianna Maitland. I want you to understand exactly how normal this day started and how it turned into one of Vermont's most baffling mysteries. The morning begins like any other. Brianna wakes up around 7:30 at her friend Jillian's house in Sheldon. She's wearing torn blue jeans, a blue fleece pullover, and black sneakers. Remember these clothes. They will become important later. She gets to Richford High School around 8 a.m. Her first class is English, and her teacher later told investigators that Brianna seemed completely normal. She participated in class discussions. She talked about her plans for after graduation. Nothing seemed out of the ordinary. Throughout the day, Brianna goes about her normal routine. During breaks between classes, she chats with friends about weekend plans. At lunch, she sits with her usual group. Everyone who saw her that day says the same thing. She seemed totally normal. Maybe a little tired from working 2 jobs, but otherwise just like any other day. When school ends at 3:30, Brianna heads to her 1985 black Oldsmobile 88. Now, this car is important to our story. It was distinctive in the area because of its age and condition. People noticed it when it drove by. She stops for gas on her way to work, and the cashier later remembers her because she paid an exact change. At 5:30 p.m., Brianna arrives for her shift at the Black Lantern Inn. And I need to tell you about this place, because understanding the Black Lantern helps us understand what happens later. This isn't just any restaurant. The Black Lantern Inn is this beautiful historic building from 1803. It's one of those places where locals gather, where everyone knows everyone else's business, where the regulars in town have their own designated seats at the bar. Brianna had been working there as a dishwasher for about 3 months. During her shift that night, a few important things happened. She picked up 2 paychecks, one from that week and one from the previous week she hadn't collected yet. She chatted with her coworkers about weekend plans. Several regular customers remembered seeing her. Everyone said that she seemed normal, maybe a little tired, but otherwise just like any other night. At 11:20 p.m., Brianna clocks out. She puts on her coat, grabs her belongings, and heads out to her car. The restaurant's security camera catches her walking to the parking lot, but the footage is grainy and only shows her for a few seconds. This is the last confirmed sighting of Brianna Maitland. Now, the drive from the Black Lantern Inn to Jillian's house should have taken about 25 minutes. Just a simple drive home after a long day of school and work. But Brianna never made it there. And what happened next? Well, this is where our story takes a turn into the truly bizarre. At approximately 1 a.m. on March 20th, a passing motorist noticed something strange. A black Oldsmobile backed into the abandoned Dutch burn house on Route 118. And when I say backed into, I don't mean like someone accidentally reversed too far. This car was literally embedded into the building's wall with enough force to damage both the vehicle and the house. I need to tell you about the Dutch burn house because its location is crucial to understanding this case. This was an abandoned farmhouse that sat along Route 118, about a mile south of East Berkshire Village. But here's the thing that makes no sense. This location was in the complete opposite direction from where Brianna should have been heading. This wasn't just a wrong turn or a slight deviation. This was entirely the wrong way. When investigators arrived at the scene, what they found, and what they didn't find, creates more questions than answers. Let me walk you through exactly what was in that car, because every detail matters here. On the front seat, in plain view, were those 2 paychecks Brianna had picked up from work. Her ATM card was in the console. In the back seat, there were clothes scattered around. A water bottle, partially empty, loose change scattered here and there, about $3.75 total. A migraine medication was there, an unopened bottle of Pepsi, her driver's license in the glove compartment, a job application she'd recently filled out for a 3rd job, some homework assignments, a few CDs, Radiohead, the Dave Matthews Band, fast food receipts from earlier that week. But what wasn't in the car? That's just as important. Her cell phone was missing. Her purse, black with silver clasps, gone. The car keys were nowhere to be found. The jacket she'd been wearing when she left work had vanished. About $150 in cash she had from tips, missing. And her favorite necklace, a silver one with a small heart pendant, was gone too. Now, this is where I need to tell you about something that still makes investigators cringe to this day. Something that might have changed everything about this investigation. The car was discovered around 1 a.m. on March 20th. But do you know when anyone realized this was a missing persons case? March 23rd. 3 whole days later. For 3 crucial days, that car sat there, exposed to the elements. 3 days where evidence could have been lost. 3 days where witnesses' memories got fuzzier. 3 days where security camera footage got recorded over. 3 days where someone could have gotten away with whatever happened to Brianna. When the responding officers first found the car, they treated it like an abandoned vehicle case. They took some basic photos, ran the plates, left a note on the windshield, and filed it as a routine incident. That's it. No further investigation, no follow-up, no missing persons report. It wasn't until Brianna's parents realized that they hadn't heard from her in days that the real investigation began. And by then, so much precious time had been lost. When investigators finally started treating this as a missing persons case, they went all out. Ground searches of the area around the Dutchburn house, canine units brought in, helicopter sweeps, door-to-door canvassing, interviews with everyone who knew Brianna. They even reviewed footage from the border crossings. Remember, we're only 5 miles from Canada. Let me tell you something about the physical evidence they found, because this is where things get really interesting. When they processed the car, they found fingerprints. Lots of them. Most matched Brianna, which makes sense. Some belonged to her known friends, also not surprising. But there were 3 partial prints they couldn't identify. 3 prints that, to this day, haven't been matched to anyone. The forensics team also collected DNA evidence, though the 3-day delay and weather exposure made this challenging. They found hair samples, fiber evidence from car seats, and what we call touch DNA from the steering wheel and door handles. They even analyzed the tire tracks, which suggested something fascinating. The car had been backed into the house at a relatively low speed. This wasn't an accident. This was deliberate. In that first week, investigators interviewed over 100 people. The staff at the Black Lantern Inn all said the same thing. Brianna seemed normal when she left at 11:20. Maybe a little tired, but nothing unusual. She talked about weekend plans, and she left alone. But then we have these really interesting witness statements from local residents. Several people reported unusual traffic in the area that night. One witness saw headlights at the Dutchburn house around midnight. Another heard a car revving its engine around 12:30 a.m. But strangely, no one reported hearing a crash. Now, I need to tell you about something that makes this case even more bizarre. Just 1 month before Brianna disappeared, 1 month, another young woman vanished under eerily similar circumstances. Her name was Maura Murray, and she disappeared from Haverhill, New Hampshire after a car accident. She was 21 years old. Like Brianna's case, the initial police response was delayed. Like Brianna's case, her car was found, but she wasn't. Like Brianna's case, personal items were left behind. And like Brianna's case, Maura Murray has never been found. The cases happened about 90 miles apart, but the similarities are striking. Both young women disappeared after vehicle incidents. Both cases happened in rural New England. Both had confused initial police responses. Both remain unsolved to this day. Could this be a coincidence? Maybe, but it's a pretty big coincidence, don't you think? Over the years, several theories have emerged about what happened to Brianna. The first major theory involves drug trafficking. Now, you need to understand what was happening in the area in 2004. Vermont was dealing with serious drug problems, especially around the Canadian border. The Dutchburn house, known drug drop point. Perfect visibility of approaching vehicles, multiple escape routes, limited police presence, history of suspicious activity. Several informants came forward suggesting drug connections. The location where Brianna's car was found had allegedly been used for drug transactions. The whole scene, the way the car was positioned, the items left behind, some investigators thought it looked like a message. But here's the problem with this theory. There's no evidence Brianna was involved with drugs. Her work schedule and school attendance suggest someone focused on building a future. Her family and close friends strongly deny any drug involvement. No drugs or paraphernalia were found in her car. The second major theory connects back to that assault we talked about earlier. Remember, Brianna had pressed charges against Keely LaCrosse after a serious fight that left her with a broken nose and a concussion. The court date was pending when she disappeared. There were allegedly threats made against her after she filed charges. Some people in town weren't happy that she'd gone to the police. The timing certainly raises eyebrows. We're talking about a disappearance just weeks after the assault, right before court proceedings were set to begin. In a small town like this, these kinds of tensions can run deep. Several witnesses reported hearing threats. The social dynamics had clearly changed. But, and this is a big but, everyone involved in that assault had solid alibis for the night that Brianna vanished. The physical evidence doesn't support this theory. There are too many unexplained elements. Then we have what might be the most chilling theory: human trafficking. When you look at the bigger picture of what was happening in the region in 2004, this theory becomes disturbingly plausible. There were several attempted abductions along the Canadian border that year. Think about it. Brianna was a young woman, working alone late at night, following a regular, predictable schedule. The location where her car was found was just minutes from the border. Multiple escape routes, limited police presence, easy access to main highways. The crime scene itself suggests multiple perpetrators. The whole thing seems professionally executed. Very little evidence was left behind. It has all the hallmarks of a planned operation. But again, we run into problems with this theory. No surveillance footage showed any suspicious vehicles. Border cameras didn't pick up anything unusual. No witnesses reported seeing an abduction. Now, let me tell you about how modern technology is helping with this case, because this is fascinating. In recent years, investigators have been using some incredible new tools. They're doing genetic genealogy testing. Think 23andMe, but for solving crimes. All the physical evidence has been retested using new techniques. They're using advanced DNA extraction methods that didn't exist in 2004. They've even created a 3D reconstruction of the crime scene. Using laser scanning technology, they can now analyze exactly how the car hit the house. They can calculate impact forces, determine speeds, study movements. They're using geographic profiling to analyze patterns and connections we couldn't see before. In 2021, 3 new witnesses came forward. People who had kept quiet for years finally decided to speak up. They provided new details about that night, offered additional context about what was happening in the area. Every new piece of information gets run through advanced databases, compared against other cases, and analyzed for patterns we might have missed before. The Vermont State Police have never given up on this case. They have a dedicated task force that meets regularly. They're still following up on new leads, still interviewing witnesses, and still testing evidence. The case is very much active. But no one has worked harder to find answers than Brianna's parents, Bruce and Kelly Maitland. For 19 years, they've never stopped searching. They've hired private investigators. They've maintained a Facebook page to keep Brianna's story alive. They've given countless media interviews. They've worked with documentary makers. They've pushed for changes in how missing persons cases are handled. They've even helped other families going through similar situations. You know what keeps investigators up at night about this case? Those missing 85 minutes. We know Brianna left work at 11:20 p.m. Her car was found around 1 a.m. The drive should have taken 15 minutes. So what happened during those other 85 minutes? Where did she go? Who did she meet? What made her drive in the completely wrong direction? The evidence we have paints such a confusing picture. The car was deliberately positioned. This wasn't an accident. Some valuable items were taken while others were left behind. The scene looks both professionally executed and strangely amateur at the same time. It's like putting together a puzzle where the pieces don't quite fit. Let me tell you about the newest theory investigators are working with, because this one really makes you think. They believe Brianna might not have been the intended target that night. the location, the timing, the way everything played out, it suggests there might have been a case of mistaken identity. There were similar vehicles described in other criminal activities in the area. The scene staging indicates confusion, like maybe things didn't go according to someone's plan. Every few months, new tips come in. Someone remembers something they saw that night. Someone overhears a conversation that makes them think twice. Someone's conscience starts weighing on them. The Vermont State Police follow up on every single lead, no matter how small it might seem. And that's where you come in, true crime family. Someone knows what happened to Brianna Maitland that cold March night in 2004. Maybe they've been afraid to come forward. Maybe they think what they know isn't important enough. Maybe they've been carrying this secret for far too long. If you have any information, and I mean anything at all, about what happened to Brianna, there are people waiting to hear from you. You can call the Vermont State Police, you can email them, and if you want to remain anonymous, you can call the tip line. You can even submit information through Crime Stoppers. Don't think any detail is too small. Did you hear about unusual activity in the area during March 2004? Did someone's behavior suddenly change? Did you notice anything strange around the Dutchborn house? Did you hear any rumors or stories that seemed odd? Every piece of information matters. Today, Brianna would be 37 years old. She should be out there living her life, pursuing her dreams, maybe having a family of her own. Instead, her parents have spent 19 years wondering what happened to their daughter. 19 years of birthdays without their child. 19 years of holidays with an empty chair at the table. 19 years of questions without answers. But this case isn't cold. It's very much alive. Every day, investigators are working to solve it. Every day, new technology offers new possibilities. Every day brings us one day closer to finding out what happened to Brianna Maitland. As I sit here on my couch, I can't help but think about Bruce and Kelly Maitland, about how they've never given up hope, about how they've turned their pain into purpose by helping other families of missing people, about how they still believe that one day they'll know what happened to their daughter. Someone out there knows something. Maybe you're listening right now. Maybe it's time to finally come forward. It's never too late to do the right thing. Never too late to bring peace to a family that has waited for far too long for answers. This has been True Crime from my couch. I'm Allie, reminding you that every case matters. Every victim has a story, and every family deserves answers. Stay safe, stay aware, and never stop searching for the truth. Good night, True Crime family. If you enjoyed this episode, please subscribe, like, and leave a comment down below. I will see you guys next time. Bye.